So I served here in the UAE previously, and I left 8 years ago. And I'm so pleased to see how the relationship has grown and continued to grow in that time period. 2 years ago, the current president, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, when he was Crown Prince and Vice President, signed an agreement with our then Prime Minister Boris Johnson called Partnership for the Future. And that's given us more impetus in the way that we are collaborating together, both on the economic and prosperity side, with investment in the UK and investment in the UAE, and a strong trading relationship, as well as on the defence and security side, which is always a priority for any country. So the UK chaired COP 2 years ago in COP26, and I think every year this becomes more important. The climate emergency has to be addressed, as Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the COP chair designate, says. And so we really have to focus on reducing emissions, increasing mitigations, helping countries adapt, providing the financing to do all that. And this is a key priority for COP28. It's a huge challenge for the world, for the UAE to lead that process, and we want to do whatever we can to support it. To support it, we need to increase renewable and clean energy. And there's a target, we'd like a bold target to maybe triple renewables by 2030. We have to reduce emissions. And just like the UAE has just published its own commitments to net zero, it's refined commitments. We need countries around the world, the big emitters, to put out what are called national NDCs, national, I can't remember what the D stands for, commitments, in order to reduce their emissions. We have to phase out unabated fossil fuels, while at the same time providing alternative energy sources. And we also need to address the countries which are being affected right now by climate change through development assistance. And all of this requires a huge amount of finance. And some of that finance will be very productive. There's no reason why businesses can't get involved in private money in order to make money and be commercially driven by it. But we need to provide the right incentives. So there's development assistance, which the UK and many other countries provide, and we have to do our part on that. There's a famous $100 billion that we need to make sure that we live up to that commitment. But equally, we need to bring private finance to play in the trillions. The UAE's had a long role in this. So the UAE's been investing for well over a decade in the UK in renewable energy. They're investors in major wind farms, offshore wind farms, the London Array, wind farms in Scotland, floating high wind farms off the coast of Scotland. The UAE's also invested in battery storage in the UK. And the UK and the UAE have both invested in each other's countries in hydrogen projects. So there's a lot of cooperation that we have together, as well as in third countries where our businesses and our governments work together to help other countries through their own energy transitions. So COP28, we think that the UAE is a great country to be hosting it. It understands energy, has a long history in energy, has a long history in renewable and clean energy, including nuclear. So it has an example it has set, and we need to bring more countries with us. But it's a huge challenge. So I've answered some of those questions already, but through Mazda, the UAE has been a major player in renewable energy for a long time. Their offshore wind and battery head offices are actually in London. So they run their global operations on wind and batteries out of London because we have technology and investments that we share between the UK and the UAE. They have some really interesting investments. I mentioned hydrogen. BP and ADNOC invested in Teesside in the northeast of England and here in Abu Dhabi. But also some really interesting innovations. So Octopus Energy from the UK and TAQA from the UAE investing in Morocco in a British company called X-Links, with the ambition to bring solar and wind energy from Morocco to the UK. 3,500 kilometers of cable to do that. So some really important innovations. We intend to do the same, hopefully, in other parts of the world, but we can help them through their energy transition. So there will be very strong UK participation at COP28. We've been strong contributors at all COPs, up to the one that we chaired 2 years ago in Glasgow. So we'll have many of our leaders, as well as British companies, British investors, British scientists and experts contributing to COP28. Oh, certainly. There'll be bilateral initiatives, I'm sure, with the UAE, as well as UK initiatives on things like nature. We want to make sure that we bring huge funding to nature-based solutions, because this is the flip side, is that part of the mitigation to the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is ensuring that we have the right vegetation on the ground. So mangroves is a very important project that we work jointly on with Emirati organisations. Developing and sustaining forests around the world and supporting indigenous groups of people that understand how to do that, as well as looking after small island developing states whose very existence is threatened or who find themselves affected by severe climate change in terms of climate events like hurricanes in the Caribbean. So nature-based solutions, how we protect those communities and those areas which have been most immediately affected by climate change is a really important additional area for the UK to work on with the UAE. I think we'll also work with the UAE on food security. We're hosting a conference in London on the 20th of November to help lead up to COP28, where there'll be a food security element there as well. So the UAE is the UK's 19th largest trading partner. And I think we've hit just about, last year, 22 billion pounds worth of bilateral trade. And the UAE is the UK's 13th largest export market. So a very significant trading partner for the UAE. The UK, the fourth most significant market, non-oil market in Europe. But I think more important than the trade in a way is the investment in both directions and the flow of people. And tourism, yes, there are plenty of tourists that go in both directions, but actually it's the expertise and the knowledge that we see transfer in both directions. I mentioned Mazda bringing its knowledge to London on offshore wind and batteries, but you find in the UAE, British scientists and engineers and collaboration. So those people-to-people links are massively important in both countries' futures.